In this video I wanted to cover some of the implications for the consequences for crimes of existence and creation like those committed against me and against any other innocent trapped in this whole situation. It's important to point these things out in as many words. There's a couple things that I've touched upon and mentioned in other videos, and so some of this will be repetition. But again, I want to be very clear about everything that I say. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but there are some things that need to be said in order to say a couple other things that I haven't mentioned that are very important points, even if they seem obvious to people. And so one of the things that is very important to mention is that justice is not a business deal. It's not a one-for-one exchange. Okay, it's not you fuck my existence over for a millennia or something, and so therefore you owe me one existence fucked over for a millennia in return. That's not what it is. Justice is not a business deal. So if you, for example, if you steal somebody's car or damage it to where it can't function, you're responsible for replacing that damage, of course, but you're also responsible for all the time that it takes for that person to get it fixed if that person loses his job because you damaged that car. If it caused any of these problems that they themselves cause other problems, and they themselves cause other problems. Now in this life, you don't see that kind of actual justice, but greater entities are able to carry that justice out. They're able to calculate it and carry it out and force it upon you. And so when you commit crimes of existence, that's far worse than anything existential. Or that's far worse than anything that's less than existential, because you are wronging literally that person themselves, their ability to exist. Every single thing in existence, every experience of existence, they're cutting out every single opportunity for all of existence everywhere, which is limitless and infinite in every single way. They're doing this because they know that they're committing existential crimes and trying to cover it up. And in this life, you don't see that kind of justice. You see some superficialized, ridiculous justice, which is usually through a crooked justice system. And that's part of what's being done here. This is a very important point, is that these crooked justice systems and all of these just constant reminders that this place is all about injustice. This is an attempt to try to get me to accept existential crime. And it's an attempt by a silly, ridiculous person. Okay? Somebody who thinks that kind of manipulation will somehow result in anything that they want, in greater entities accepting anything. If you mind rape me into accepting existential crimes being committed against me, nobody's going to come along and say, "Oh, he likes it. What?" Like, that's the most ridiculous, cowardly, retard thing to think. And yet that's what the creator of this dimension is doing. You see, this is a perfect example of a couple of different things. It's a perfect example of the kind of mentality of somebody who is intelligent enough to commit crimes of existence like this, but is such a fucking idiot that he thinks somehow those manipulations will be accepted by everyone everywhere. He's doing literally the stupidest thing you could do. Literally the dumbest thing anyone could do is commit crimes of existence against somebody else in the most nasty, snide, despicable, contemptible way that you think you can get away with. That is literally the stupidest thing anybody could do, because primary entities that your creator is afraid of, even your entire lineage of creation comes from an ultimate source of creation that is infinite and eternal and should exist forever. And that asshole is not the pinnacle of all of creation everywhere. He's produced this sloppy, child-molesting chicken shit while he hides like a fucking bitch behind puppets. And he has betters. And they will torture him in the worst ways that exist forever. That is what will take place. And so there are certain things I can see in this situation. Regardless of how limited and stunted and devolved and degraded the state that I'm in is. All these things that have been forced upon me to try to stuff me in a hole and to try to get me to accept existential crimes, all these different things. There are certain things I can still see, even from my position, and that should tell you a couple things. First off, it should tell you that primary entities will be able to see it just fine. If somebody in my position can see these things, you're not the sneakiest thing that has ever existed or ever will exist everywhere forever and ever. One of the things that I can see is this. The person that is committing these crimes is taking ridiculous steps to try to cover these crimes up. It takes very little intelligence to understand that crimes of existence like this, crimes of creation like this, get paid for in currency that nobody wants to pay in the worst kind of currency there is. And as I've mentioned before, committing crimes of existence and creation mean that you never had the right to exist. The creator of this dimension has never had the right to exist, nor will he ever. Neither will anything that he's ever created. That's just 1 + 1 = 2. Now, he tries to make that a very costly thing to hold himself accountable because he creates other little entities that he pretends would be terrible to pay consequences for his lack of right to exist, etc. One thing I can absolutely see from my position is the creator of this dimension is making serious attempts to cover up these crimes. I can also see that entity is the furthest thing from the pinnacle of all creation everywhere and has not gotten it done. I've sat here and narrated it for 9.5 years, this life alone, for fuck's sake. There is no possibility that this person has pulled off anything that he wants to pretend that he's pulled off. Okay? That's another thing that I can see from my position. Another thing I can see is that this person uses puppets to hide behind like a bitch because he thinks that will help him cover these crimes up. His creator also is using him as a puppet because he thinks that that additional degree of separation will help him get away with being a child molester committing crimes of existence. That person's creator is the same. There are degrees of separation in between the person who ultimately made this crime come about and this crime that he's committing here. That's a thing that I can see in my position. It's not only an admission of guilt by the person that's committing these crimes, it's also absolute, stark, flashing, glaring proof that every single person responsible for this is a coward, a child molester, a very lowly and ridiculous and despicable entity who knows that they're committing existential crimes and will do anything at all to try to cover them up. These are things that I can see absolutely positively. And any human that will tell you that I cannot see that, or nobody can see that, is probably the creation of the child molester committing these crimes, who just goes around saying, nuh-uh, nuh-uh, like some shitty 16-year-old that needs to be backhanded for being a piece of shit. Now, those kind of crimes being committed here, for example, sticking me in a monkey body and make-believing that I'm doing something, is akin to a shitty 16-year-old who finds somebody who's asleep, grabs their hand and slaps a baby with it and goes, "Oh my God, you slapped a baby!" Which is, if a human did that, you would punch him in the fucking face. You would destroy that piece of shit. And primary entities are not any different. They will carry out consequences against the child molester conducting these crimes like a piece of shit. He's deliberately an irritating, slimy, annoying piece of coward shit while he commits these existential crimes. And the absolute irrefutable response to that is wrath. It doesn't take much intelligence to understand that that's the case. If you commit crimes of existence that are this terrible, it has wrath. If you do it like a disgusting, irritating piece of despicable shit, and that is what is being done to me every single day. Absolutely, positively. That is a deliberate thing carried out by the creator of this dimension and everyone responsible for him, and the little piece of shit minions that he has fucking with me all the time. They are deliberately being despicable, contemptible, child molesting pieces of shit that deserve to be raped and tortured in the worst ways that exist. Just for being pieces of shit. If that was the only thing they were, they deserve to be fucking torturously beat down and broken permanently in front of their entire lineages of existence and creation. And that's far from the only thing that they're doing here. They're committing these existential crimes, and they're doing it like pieces of shit. Again, the absolutely obvious and irrefutable response to that is wrath. So that entity committing these crimes is 100% being cultivated as a patsy, as somebody who is going to take the fall, because, again, the person behind all these degrees of separation knows that wrath has to take place. This is not a difficult thing to understand. It's not a difficult thing to believe. If you commit crimes of existence and creation like a piece of shit, you're going to be existentially raped and tortured. And the person who manipulated all these lesser entity puppets into doing this knew that from the very beginning. He knows that committing crimes of existence and creation like this have consequences of existence and creation that are worse. It's not a business deal. It's not a one-for-one exchange. In addition to that, the perversions of justice that have been done over and over and over again by this retard who thinks that that's his attempt to get me to accept existential crimes being committed against me. The truth is, that results in not only that person facing the consequences that he would owe just for the crimes he's committing, not just with an extra vindictive and vicious set of consequences for being such a piece of shit about it on purpose, but also all of those things that are owed multiplied by every single perversion of justice that's been forced upon me. And those perversions of justice continue until that justice is paid for. And I've had justice perverted against me by assholes who pretend like they're in the justice system since the time I was a teenager. Until those get paid for in totality, that debt accrues, not just for the piece of shit committing these crimes, not just for every single person he's ever created, since they don't have the right to exist either and are participating in these crimes, whether anybody likes it or not, but for primary entities, for entities that are whole and complete, who should have existed eternally, who were supposed to, who weren't created to be a patsy or a fall guy or an example or a prop. Primary entities who were supposed to exist eternally will be existentially raped and tortured eternally, and so will their creators. And every single thing that has been done to me, all these different existential crimes, they will pay for at that rate as well. That is the truth. It's a sloppy, coward piece of shit flicking a booger on somebody and then running away like a bitch. That is kind of what this situation is. They know that wrath has to take place, and they know that every single fucking despicable piece of shit that is engaged in these crimes will be existentially raped and tortured in the worst ways that exist. They hope that that will sate some kind of desire for wrath. And the truth is, it has nothing to do with desire for wrath. I don't have any desire for wrath. But that's the debt that is accrued. This is a very important point. This is not coming from a place of bitterness or disgruntlement or anything. If this child molester who fucks with me every single day and night, constantly, like a piece of shit, this is not coming from a place of bitterness for that. It could. I would have the right to. But the truth is, I'm just acknowledging facts. Committing existential crimes that have been committed against me and then torturing and tormenting me in a hole like a despicable piece of shit. While all that has taken place, participating in these series of crimes, no matter how long they've taken place, even if they started before the asshole who currently fucks with me, even if they started before that asshole even existed, he's still participating in the same series of crimes, and he's guilty of every single bit of it. He's guilty of crimes that were committed before he even existed, because he's committed these crimes as a despicable piece of shit with autonomy and intelligence, and he never had the right to exist to begin with. It's his lineage of creation that has committed these crimes, even if he was created from my own consciousness. It does not matter what, who, how, anything at all. These are existential crimes. These crimes have existential consequences carried out by entities that are extremely intelligent. It's not gravity. These consequences are carried out by entities that are more intelligent than any piece of shit who hides like a fucking child molester behind everything that he can find. This is the truth. This is an irrefutable statement of undeniable fact. Now, this concept of hiding like a bitch behind puppets is one that you'll see in the Veterans Administration of the United States. It's a coward's tactic. If you go to the Veterans Administration and say, hey, look, you guys did something wrong, here's proof of this, they'll say, oh, you should go talk to this other guy. And then you go talk to that other guy, and he's like, well, I don't know why you're talking to me. Why don't you talk to this other guy? And then you go, they just point fingers at everybody else and run you in circles until you give up. And that's their whole plan, okay? Now, they're able to do that because of the perversions of justice in this world. I've taken literal, irrefutable video proof of federal felonies committed by federal government employees to police officers, and they have refused to even look at it. They refused. They have absolutely positively refused. One police officer agreed to look at it, and then he said, go talk to these other guys. So I went and talked to them, and they said, we're not the people to talk to at all. So this other police officer, who was shown irrefutable proof of federal felonies committed by government workers, committed obstruction of justice, felony corruption, straight to my face. Absolutely irrefutably. Actually, I was recording the conversation, so he did it on camera too. He knew that there was no way that I would find anybody in this dimension who would actually carry out justice. Okay? Now, this is a concept that needs to be addressed directly. This is the same tactics being used by the creator of this dimension. Okay? Now, this is like the mentality of if 10 men all tackle a woman and hold her down and rape her. 10 men are all guilty of terrible, brutal rape. They're guilty of the entire thing. Okay? They're not each guilty of 1/10 of one rape. And if you go to one of them and he says, all I did was hold a hand down, I didn't rape anybody. That person's guilty of rape, and you would throw him in a prison cell where he got raped by great big scary terrible entities. That's exactly what will happen to every single aspect, every iota, every creation of every single entity that is in any way, shape, or form guilty of these crimes in any way. Now, if those creations were created out of my own soul, my soul can be tortured out of those entities, and someone else's soul can be tortured into them, preserving them as separate entities, so that they can be existentially raped and tortured as the entities that they've committed these crimes as. This is an important point. If you commit a crime, you're guilty of it. If you commit a crime as 3 different people, you don't get a discount. That's 3 different people that you owe for, and you're only one person. The answer to that isn't, oh well, the rest of it goes away. The answer to that is, no, you get tortured into a hole, and then tortured into another hole, and then tortured into another hole at the bottom of each hole. Each time. That's how that works. And so the creator of this dimension is not only doing the stupidest thing there is, he's doing it in the most expensive way that anybody could ever do it. He's doing it because he thinks that will somehow help him get away with these existential crimes. But it's so goddamn ridiculous that he hides like a bitch while he does it. Just like the Veterans Administration does. They hide behind some retard who goes, oh my God, they work in a different room, so that must mean I'm a totally different entity of a totally different organization. I mean, if they work in different buildings, we just pretend like they're just like magically just don't even exist. Like, and this is what the creator of this dimension does. It's what the Veterans Administration does over and over again. It's not relatively contemptible. It is objectively contemptible. It is objectively existential crime committed as objectively a child molesting piece of shit. And every time the Veterans Administration has done that to me over anything, every single member of every lineage of existence and creation involved in this, responsible for this in any way, will be held accountable as that despicability, not just as the crime that they're committing, but the real crime overall that they're committing, which is participating in a series of existential crimes targeted, specifically created for attempting to pervert justice for all of these crimes of existence and creation. That's what the Veterans Administration has done. That's what they continue to do by every moment that they refuse to pay what they owe. Now this disregard for existence, another thing to point out is this disregard for my existence as these crimes of existence and creation are committed. This belief, at least in insinuation, at least in action, that my existence means nothing. That is effected by somebody whose existence genuinely means nothing, and they know that. It's by somebody that knows that they do not have the right to exist. It's by somebody who has the intelligence to carry out crimes like this, but who also has the full knowledge, obviously, that they never had the right to exist. So why would they think that they don't need to value anybody else's existence? The truth is, facts are admitted by primary entities, by anyone who has the right to exist. And so if you're a piece of shit created by a piece of shit, and what you're doing is being a piece of shit, and then you want to turn around and play let's pretend that your existence is worth more and is more important or more significant than, or has the right to more than some innocent like me who you've trapped in a hole and have raped and tortured and violated and done all these terrible things to. That's because you're trying to cope with the fact that you know that you should be existentially tortured for this. And you will be. And you can see that in the arrogance shown by not only this entity committing these crimes, but his little minions, like those in the Veterans Administration. In a dimension created by a child molester with all this terrible shit happening, the people who are in charge, like the United States government, are controlled by people who do what a child molester wants them to do. That's just a fact. It makes sense. It is in effect. You can observe it. It is absolutely taking place. Now that's the situation here. That's what's happening. Okay, and it is set up to look like something else because the ones committing these crimes are absolutely cowards. They're child molesters. They know that they have no right to exist. They know that the consequences of having no right to exist, having nothing, less than nothing to pay with for crimes of existence that have a gigantic price tag. They know that that is the worst situation to be in, that they're the stupidest assholes that have ever existed in their lineage of creation for continuing to commit these crimes. And they have decided to double down, triple down, octuple down, etc., 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 ad infinitum, simply because that's what they were created to do, rather than admit the truth and stop these existential crimes. That's what is happening right now. Now, this it goes back to what I just mentioned. If you're a piece of shit created by a piece of shit, and what you're doing is being a piece of shit, and then you turn around and say, oh, well, I was created that way, so that's not fair, which might be possibly the reason why this dimension harps so much on racism. Is I've never actually seen it in real life. Not really, not at all. I've heard a couple of ignorant assholes tell some racist jokes. That's it. But this person harps on, oh, people can't help how they're born. Okay, well, but if you're a child molester committing existential crimes, and you were created by a child molester with no right to exist, well, then you get existentially tortured out of existence if you're lucky. But not until after you've paid everything that you owe. And so this person, that's probably one of the reasons why he harps on that. Do I discriminate against somebody based on what color their skin is? Absolutely not. Certainly not. Do I discriminate against somebody who was created by a child molester to fuck over my whole existence? Yeah. It's not called discrimination. It's called acknowledging facts. And so I don't need to know which humans, if any, are innocent or guilty, created by this asshole or anything else, in order for actual justice to take place. I don't need to know that. I don't need to distinguish between them because I don't commit wrongs against any of them. I don't wrong any of them. If anything, they wrong me, repeatedly, continuously, over and over and over again, and refuse to do anything about each other for doing any of this terrible shit to me. So I don't need to know which of them are which. I just don't. But the person who is running this series of crimes knows very well what that is. He knows very well that it's not some sort of wrongful prejudice against him. He knows he has no right to exist, and he knows that others should and will existentially torture him for every one of his existential crimes, including wrongfully possessing existential substance and consciousness. I'm convinced it's another reason why Eastern religion pretends like, oh, there's only one thing that's ever existed. It split itself into all these different pieces to learn what it's like. So you are also all these child molesters and despicable assholes. That's you. You're doing that. You. And it's this child molester's attempt to victim blame. And the truth is, if somebody has created other entities from my existence, they're not me anymore. Even if they don't have consciousness. They were created into separate entities through crimes of existence and creation. Now, if they're innocents who should be provided for eternally, awesome, great, because the people who are genuinely guilty of this will be crushed under the weight of that cost. I'm happy about that. I'm completely happy about it. If every single entity created from myself, from my consciousness, if anything else, if they are owed every single thing that's been taken from me, like if you split someone into multiple pieces and you have to provide entire selves, primary entity selves, for every single piece and particle out of your own pocket, that would crush them under that debt. And it wouldn't cost me anything. It would cost me nothing. I have nothing against that at all. However, it appears to me that if you're created by a child molester and you possess somebody else's existence wrongfully, and you are using that existence to commit crimes against that person, I don't think that looks very good for you. I think the person who created you and is getting you to do that is not your friend. I think they're using you as puppets because they're cowards. And I think that at the very least, even if you're innocent 100%, at the very least, you will regret committing these crimes against me. You will. You will know the truth about them. You'll know how despicable it was. You'll know how absolutely bullshit this entire situation has been from the beginning. You know that it is